Hi there, welcome to Bella's Vistas. Please like and subscribe. Well, today we're going to go out and make some photographs. We want to try the high resolution mode and the HDR mode. See what kind of results we can get. HDR, I usually shoot 3 exposures, and for the high resolution the camera makes 8 exposures. Now, seeing as I'm doing the high resolution mode, I want to use a really heavy tripod, and believe me, this qualifies. So I'll go down, I'll find my camera position, and then I'll set up the tripod. It's important not to set up the tripod until you've found your camera location, because once you set up the tripod, you just don't want to move it, so you won't bother. So it's important to find the camera position first. Well, we're going to park up here and take a little walk. We're going to go and look at the mill, the Blair Mill. I've photographed this for many years. Over and over, winter, summer, spring, fall. Now we're getting towards the end of winter, and I thought this would be a good place to take a few photographs in the high resolution mode so we could see what they're like. Well, looking around, this seems to be about the best location I can find. Where I figure this is where I'm going to shoot, because the thing is, if you set up your tripod, that's where you're going to stay. But if you look around first and you find the best angle, set the tripod up there. Here I found a nice spot. I'm going to line up my camera now. Now the thing is to use a lower ISO, like 200 ISO, and you have to be about f8 or f11 for the high resolution mode. So I'm going to set the camera in manual, 200 ISO, and get my exposure just right. Looking around here, this was the best angle I could find, because in the high resolution mode you don't want anything moving in the photograph. Everything has to be stationary. So I'm making my exposures here, trying a couple different settings. Switch to manual exposure. Camera's got to be f8 or higher, like f11, f8, f13 maybe. ISO at 200. Make my exposures, and the camera, as quick as a wink, makes those 8 exposures and starts combining them. Everything has to be perfectly still for these exposures. That's why I'm using such a heavy tripod. Here I'm shooting camera raw, the ORF file. That's a regular 20 megapixel image.
Of a second.
Now I'm going to get ready and I'm going to shoot the 8 burst.
Okay.
So I set the camera up at f8. Now we just have to wait for the camera to process the images. The camera makes those exposures so quickly and then blends them into a high resolution image. Now we're going to see there, that's the high resolution image right there. It's not a tremendous difference, but there's definitely a sharpness difference that's perceivable. So it's worth it, you know. Now the thing is, on a picture like this moving creek, you can't use the high resolution mode. Everything has to stand perfectly still for high resolution. So here I'm going to make a few exposures just down the river, because I like what I'm seeing. I like this bend in the river, red trees and whatnot. I'll just make a few regular exposures here shooting the Olympus RAW file. The 20 megapixel Olympus RAW file is tremendous anyway. I mean, it's better than anything I've had in the past. It really does a nice job. I was only shooting like 10 megapixels and 13 megapixels with the E cameras. Now I'm taking a look across the road. You might as well look around. Back to the mill again. Now I've got my exposures and everything's ready. So there's my image. I'm pretty happy with that as well. Now I'm going to head off. We're going to check out a couple other places, try and get some more photographs. Here I am in Cambridge. Now I really messed up here. I had to hike a ways, so I brought my smaller tripod, and it wasn't steady enough to make these pictures. I would have been better off shooting handheld and shooting an Olympus RAW, but this is you know, a good learning experience for me. I see what happens if the camera moves. You wind up with an image that's worse than the regular image. You know, you'd be better off shooting with the camera on program. See, the high resolution image just isn't sharp at all. Mary used some special software and little tricks to come up with an image that's at least interesting to look at, but it's not what I'd set out to get. I wanted to have a high resolution image of this old church and see just how sharp it was, and I failed miserably. Still, it's an interesting picture to look at. Wow, this was kind of fun. I just spent some time here watching the birds flying around. Look at that, eh? It's unbelievable. I don't know what makes them jump up and take off like that, but I spent a good 5 minutes just watching the birds fly around. You know, it's not all about working when I'm out there. It's about trying to enjoy myself too with the nature of things. Now, this is something else. We went to Rattlesnake Point. I thought, what's a good idea for something that won't move in the wind? Well, big heavy rocks, of course. This rock face is not going to be blowing around too much, but you see the motion on those branches and things. You can't have any branches like that moving in the HDR exposure, or in the high resolution mode either, when you're shooting the 8 images to blend into one. This is the area I'm thinking about using because there's nothing moving in there. This is sort of the chimney at Rattlesnake Point. It's kind of an interesting formation, but there's a lot of branches and things. Now these rocks, this is where I'm going to shoot. This is from an Olympus RAW file, so this is 20 megapixel. Then we'll check the high resolution mode here. And it's a tiny bit sharper by the looks of it. The detail in the rock, the fine grain is a little more pronounced. So it's definitely a worthwhile thing to use if you have the time to use a tripod. It doesn't take long to make the 3 exposures. So once again, this is the high resolution mode, and we'll switch back to the regular mode. There you go. Well, now here's our high resolution image. It's just the tiniest bit sharper than the regular image. It's not, you know, it wouldn't knock you over, but it's nice. This is the Niagara escarpment from Rattlesnake Point, looking out over the countryside. I'm looking for something where I can get some detail. I'm looking here for a close-up shot on this tree. I'm thinking if I get just the right camera angle, once again I'm looking with my camera before I set up the tripod. Because like I said, once you got the tripod set up, that's going to be good enough. You're not going to bother moving it. So it's always better to find your angle that you want to use, your composition, and then set the tripod up to match that. I'm feeling a little bit clumsy after being locked up with COVID all the time here, you know, like not being out hiking around and stuff. They've just opened up this park a little bit to a certain number of people. We got a 2-hour pass to come in here. And it's quite icy too, so it's a bit treacherous. Now I'm getting a nice low camera angle here. I'm going to get right down into the snow, set up my camera. I figure I'm going to shoot HDR, high resolution, and regular RAW files, and then compare them together and see which is better. Now I'm about ready to start shooting here. I'm looking at the image on the back of the screen instead of the eyepiece, just a little more comfortable here. Lining things up. I'm sorry, I always seems to me that I'm working as fast as I can, but if I see myself on a video, I'm going pretty slow. And I don't want to fall down, so I'm being careful here. It's treacherous and icy, and now I'm going to do a little pruning so those branches are not blowing around in the wind, because I figure that'll change the high resolution image. This is my first time really trying out high res to see what it's like. This is my subject right here. This is from an Olympus RAW file, 20 megapixel RAW file. It's not high resolution yet. The little branches are still there. Now I'm going to get things set up, and I'm pruned the branches out, so I'm ready to go now. I'm gonna set the camera up. Like I said, you get f8, f11, f13, somewhere around there, and you shoot these 8 images, and the camera shoots those just like instantly. I'm shooting high resolution right now. There's the image.
It's very sharp.
Now the high resolution image has just the tiniest bit more detail in the wood check and everything like that. I haven't printed one of them yet. I'm going to make a print. Maybe we'll make a video about how big a print we can get off of one of these, and maybe use the metallic glossy paper so that it's really intense on the detail. There I am, trying to get my photographs, trying to remember what I'm here for. What a view here. Now in the fall, this is just unbelievable, but it's not fall, it's winter. This image is from an Olympus RAW file. It's normal resolution, which is 20 megapixel mode. This is an HDR from 3 RAW files. And now we'll look at the high resolution mode. Here you have the high resolution mode. You just see a little bit more detail in the checking. Look at the detail there. I mean, that's pretty amazing. The 20 megapixel from the Olympus with these lenses is phenomenal, but the 80 megapixel is better yet. Then I just had a little drive around, headed home, drove past some of our haunts that we like to visit, tried to get some HDR files, always looking for a tree. This is my first keeper shot of 2021, I think. Thanks for visiting Bella's Vistas. Please like and subscribe. Come on back soon.